Hello and welcome. I am Raziel, and today it's Friday, so it's time for a story, and we're going to the Wild West Exodus and dystopian age setting, and the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, the President of the Union. Now, the room was large. The Oval Office was considerably a huge room for what it was necessary for, but tonight the President found it bigger than usual. This wall seemed to go on forever, and he thought he could barely see the ceiling. He looked at his mahogany desk. It was a ball and chain to him. He could no longer lead this country properly while chained to this desk. He needed to be out there. But he knew what he had to do. Tonight, he was going to die. He looked out the window across Pennsylvania Avenue. The sun was setting. Golds and yellows and reds illuminated the sky. It was a beautiful evening, and it made him smile. The President chuckled a little. What a night to die on, and to see such beauty beforehand. His mind was filled with worries. The All War had finished, and the destruction of Richmond tore a hole in his heart. 25% of the population were dead, all to end the most savage of wars. There was unrest in the West. The warrior nations and the enlightened were causing issues. To the west of the country, along the Pacific, the Empire was forming massive fleets, and to the east, the Crown and the Alliance were also controlling the oceans. He had many thoughts through his head, and he knew what he had to do. Once again he thought he had to die. Major Rathbone entered the room. A stocky, well-built man, a veteran of many wars. His scars showed this. President, it is time to leave. We have to go now. They walked down the steps of the White House towards the black coaches that waited for him. They were black as death and reminded the President of a hearse. Gleaming black horses pulled the carriage. The coach shone in the late evening sun. Stars were starting to just appear, glinting in the night sky. They made their way to Ford's Theatre, handed the tickets to the usher, and made their way to the box. The box was high up and well away from the crowd, exactly as planned. He wanted this to happen as far away from people as could possibly be, to minimize any form of collateral damage. It was during the third act of Our American Cousin when John Wilkes Booth burst through the door. "Sic temper tyrannis," he shouts. A blast of roars, blood spurts, and the Emperor slumps, and his wife screams. Rathbone wrestles the gun from Booth's hands and quickly arrests him. Then the funeral came. The country was in mourning. How a great leader could be so quickly and easily dispatched without any problems. This was a shock to everyone, and the nation was silenced. The funeral went off without a hitch. It didn't rain, and the sun was shining, exactly how Abraham Lincoln would have liked it. How the President enjoyed the sun and being outside. This was the perfect day for the President's funeral. His wife was crying mournfully. Rathbone was stoic in his position, and Odysseus Grant had come back from Arizona to watch the funeral and mourn in his own way. Odysseus Grant was burning with anger. He knew who'd done this, and he knew who had to pay. So, when the funeral had finished, he went out and searched down John Wilkes Booth. John Wilkes Booth was in custody at the time. 2 shots from a 6-shooter, and Booth lived no more. No one questioned Odysseus Grant's motives. No one cared. He wasn't even arrested for this. Everyone was happily smiling that Booth was now dead. The killer of our president lay dead in his cell, and we know the killer walked away a free man. Underneath the city of Washington, a man walked. Long black coat, with his gun axe, dimly lit by lanterns, his top hat dirty and wet from the sewage, when he came across a room filled with several men and women, all smartly dressed and well and informal wear. And the first words were uttered from Major Rathbone, who was there. "Evening, Mr. President," he said. "We are your Secret Service. The plan went off without a hitch. How did you know Odysseus Grant would hunt down Booth?" The President hung his head and said, "Booth knew the risks. He was well aware that he was going to die as well. He was happy to do it because he knew the country was needed to see me die. No one can know that I'm alive, not even my precious, most beautiful of wives, Mary. She was not to know this. She is to mourn and never know that I am still alive here and now." This plan went off as it needed to be. They began talking about their next steps and what the Secret Service was to do. There you go. That's the story of the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, basically a lot of that went down. I kind of embellished the death of John Wilkes Booth and who did it. It might not have been Odysseus Grant, but I think it would make a good example of how Abraham Lincoln would know what someone would do given the way they are. Like, Odysseus Grant's a very violent man, and he would hunt down the president's killer. He would do anything to do that. And of course, people would be mourning the assassination of Abraham Lincoln and be actually okay with it. The police would turn a blind eye to seeing this assassin murdered in their cell. You know, the whole he committed suicide storyline, whatever. But yeah, I think that would fit this story very well. That bit I did actually add. But the assassination and him coming back under the sewers, that's absolutely canon. He did fake his own death. He did create the Secret Service, and he found that because of that, he could lead the country better. He could instruct the president, who would be well aware that he would be dead, but obviously not telling that Abraham Lincoln would be alive, but not tell anyone about it, because he needed the secrecy. And he could take advice from Abraham Lincoln, who's getting stuff and information from the ground, and it's basically first-hand knowledge from the Secret Service to the president. And there is many things that he did. Like, he was worried about the wars in the Atlantic, the wars in Pacific as well. Stuff that was happening in the Lost World, where he had sent off Theodore Roosevelt. So there were many worries, and he was aware that his presidency was full of bureaucracy, and he couldn't properly run the country without all the paperwork. He had to do something and lead an army which would be pretty much underground, but official at the same time. And this would make, like I said, it makes it for an interesting story, and I really like this is some of the lore I like, with an alternative timeline where assassins and, you know, Abraham Lincoln didn't actually die, but he formed this new movement and this new way of helping to help his country. So I said help twice there, I should say. But that's just what I think, and that I think is really cool about Wild West Exodus, some of these alternate timelines and things that have changed and moved on from that. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to get the Abraham Lincoln model, Legendary or Normal, there's Wayland Games down below. I do get 5% off. He's got the Secret Service posse and his own Legendary model. They are fantastic kits if you want to get them. Free delivery after £20. There's also Forbidden Planet, big comics, DVDs, mangas, plushies, toys, etc. My comics as well. There is my merchandise, cups, t-shirts, what everyone else does basically. There's Skyforge. Don't forget to give that guy a click and a look at his stuff, because he deserves the traffic. He's a good guy. He's a good friend of mine. And no, I don't get paid for that one. I never will do. I'll never ask him for money. And okay, Patreon, which I really need to update more often. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.